Okay, here's something really fundamental. The United States security guarantee for Europe, the one that's defined things since 1945, well, our source material suggests it's fundamentally over.
It's a huge shift.
Yeah, a tectonic shift. The U.S. isn't really the security guarantor anymore. It's acting more like the primary arms supplier, and it's demanding its allies foot the bill.
It's this new Europe pays model.
Exactly. And the really striking thing, the financial transfer, well, it's pretty much already happened. Welcome to Nation Scope Podcast. Join Jordan and Jamie as they dive into the latest headlines, breaking stories, and critical events shaping America and the world. From politics to culture, from the economy to technology, they analyze the news that matters most. So today we're doing a deep dive. We're looking at a major new report that really maps out Europe's defense situation now in this era of, well, American retrenchment.
Yeah, and it's important, I think, to get past the hypotheticals. People talk about U.S. isolationism, but this report argues it's not some future if. It's happening now. It's a transactionalization of security.
Transactionalization.
Okay. Right. The core issue is that the U.S. commitment, what it actually means, is being redefined as we speak.
And wow, there's a lot to unpack here. We're going to get into how Europe, believe it or not, has actually surpassed the U.S. in total aid to Ukraine. We'll also look at why Europe might be building what some call a hollow force, even though they're spending record amounts on defense.
That's a key risk.
And then there are the leaders, Macron, Schultz, Tusk, their visions for the future. Totally different. We need to understand what that means for NATO. Okay, let's start with the driver behind this, the so-called Trump Doctrine.
Well, the source material really frames this doctrine as fundamentally transactional when it comes to European security. The crucial point isn't that the U.S. is pulling out militarily. Not at all.
Okay.
It's withdrawing the financial subsidy. The idea that American taxpayers cover, the lion's share of the costs for Europe's defense. That's what's changing. The U.S. military-industrial power, that's staying put.
So America keeps being the world's arsenal, the factories, the advanced weapons, all that, but it's basically sent Europe the bill. Is that the idea?
That's a good way to put it. It lets the U.S. maximize its industrial leverage, its political clout, while minimizing the burden on its own taxpayers.
But wait, if Europe's just the bank, doesn't America still hold all the cards? I mean, they control the factories?
That's the core tension, isn't it? That's what's driving everything. And you can really see how this policy took shape by looking at the roller coaster rhetoric on Ukraine in 2025.
Right. There were those two phases.
Exactly. Phase 1, early in the year, that was all about a realist settlement. The talk was pushing for negotiations, maybe even hinting that Ukraine might have to give up territory.
Yeah, that was around February 2025, right? When President Trump reportedly told President Zelensky, you don't have the cards. The feeling was, maybe a quick deal, swap some land.
Precisely. Then, bam, Phase 2, late September 2025. After meeting Zelensky, suddenly the tone shifts completely. It's hawkish, pro-victory talk. Russia's a paper tiger. Ukraine can fight and win all of Ukraine back.
That sounds like a complete U-turn. How does that square with the transactional idea?
Well, that's the thing. The source material argues it was a rhetorical reversal, not a fundamental policy one. The shift served purposes, pressure Putin, boost Ukrainian morale, look strong back home, but the actual mechanism for aid, that didn't change.
Okay.
The core policy had already been set back in mid-July 2025. Any U.S. military hardware for Ukraine. It had to be funded entirely by NATO allies buying the equipment from the U.S.
So when he finished that paper tiger post saying the U.S. would continue to supply weapons to NATO for NATO to do what they want with them, that wasn't a blank check.
Not at all. It was reinforcing the existing model. America's the arsenal, Europe's the financier. And, when you look at the actual money, this transactional shift is undeniable. The data just blows apart any lingering idea that the U.S. is still leading on total aid funding.
Let's look at those numbers then, because they really do show the shift. Team Europe, that's the EU institutions, plus the member states they've committed, way more overall than the U.S.
Yeah, the figures are quite something.
By early 2025, European commitments hit, what, $187.2 billion, compared to the U.S. allocation of $114 billion. Europe isn't just catching up. They're the main financial backers now.
And this creates a pretty clear division of labor, functionally speaking. Europe has become the primary economic lifeline for Ukraine.
How so?
Well, over $92 billion in financial and budget support has come from Europe. That's money that pays salaries, keeps the government running, basic state functions. Absolutely critical. Plus, Europe took on the huge cost of supporting over 4 million Ukrainian refugees.
Right, the human cost, the social cost. Meanwhile, the U.S. focus has historically been more on, like, battlefield tech, high-end weapons.
Historically, yes. Lethality. But even there, Europe's catching up fast. Their military aid allocations, about $42 billion, are almost level with the U.S. figure of $43.1 billion.
And in terms of actual kit delivered, Europe's provided the vast majority of some key things, like 83% of the tanks, 76% of the air defense systems. That's huge.
It is, but... And this is a big but. This is where we run into that industrial reality check. The money's pledged, the hardware's listed, but the source material really flags this major vulnerability, the commitment allocation gap. Meaning the leaders make these big promises, pledge huge sums, but the defense industry, the system itself, has been too slow turning those promises into actual weapons delivered to the front line.
So the political will is there, the money's allocated on paper, but getting it there fast enough is the problem.
Exactly. And that gap, that delay, really undermines Europe's credibility and effectiveness as a security actor trying to stand more on its own feet.
It makes you ask, are they just moving money around, or are they genuinely building independent capability?
That's the core question, which leads us straight into the next challenge, Europe trying to build up its own arsenal. And there is progress, an industrial awakening of sorts.
We are seeing some movement, especially on ammunition, right? That's been a huge bottleneck.
Definitely. Annual production capacity for artillery shells, we're talking 155 millimeters, set to jump dramatically, like a 6-fold increase, aiming for maybe 2 million rounds a year by the end of 2025.
Driven by things like the ASAP program, Act in Support of Ammunition Production.
Right, and new factories coming online. Structurally, too, they've launched the European Defense Industrial Strategy, EDIS. That sets real targets, like aiming for 50% of defense procurement budgets to be spent on European-made gear by 2030, trying to finally overcome that old problem of every country doing its own thing.
Okay, so progress on production. But the report points to this critical dependency, the thing that could make all this rearmament kind of ineffective, this reliance on the U.S. for strategic enablers. What exactly are those? Sounds important.
It is important. Think of it like the military's central nervous system. Strategic enablers are those high-tech capabilities that let modern forces operate effectively over large areas. Seeing the battlefield, moving troops quickly, coordinating complex actions.
And Europe depends on the U.S. for this.
Hugely. The data is pretty stark. Between early 2022 and mid-2023, something like 78% of military gear bought by EU countries came from outside the EU. And get this, 63% of the total came specifically from the United States.
Wow, 63%.
Yeah. So they're utterly reliant, as the report puts it, on the U.S. for things like top-tier intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance ISR, especially the space-based stuff, the satellites, also strategic airlift, the big cargo planes you need to deploy forces far and fast, and air-to-air refueling, keeping jets in the air longer.
So Europe might be building up the muscle, the tanks, the troops, the shells, but the U.S. still holds the keys to the nervous system, the operational connective tissue.
That's a perfect analogy. And that's the heart of the hollow force risk.
Hollow force.
Yeah, if the U.S. were to withdraw these enabling capabilities, say, to focus on the Pacific or just charge a lot more for them, Europe's own conventional forces, even if bigger on paper, would be severely crippled operationally. You'd have the mass, but lack the ability to effectively command, control, see, and sustain it over distance. Your effectiveness just plummets.
Okay, that dependency really explains why the strategic debate inside Europe is so, well, frantic right now, and why the key leaders seem to be pulling in different directions.
Absolutely. You've got these really distinct visions emerging.
Let's break them down. Macron in France.
Macron is the visionary of sovereignty. He sees this whole crisis, this transactional shift from the U.S. as Europe's big chance, an opportunity to build real strategic autonomy, potentially as a replacement for the old U.S. guarantee. He's pushing hard for that geopolitical Europe.
Okay, replacement, then Germany, Scholz.
Scholz is more the cautious Atlanticist. Germany's Zeitenwende, that huge defense spending increase, it's framed very much as strengthening the European pillar of NATO. For Berlin, building more European capability, more autonomy, it's seen as a prerequisite to preserve the alliance with the U.S., not to replace it, maintain the link, but make Europe a stronger partner within it.
So prerequisite to preserve. And then Poland, Tusk, frontline state perspective.
Tusk is the pragmatist, maybe the powerhouse pragmatist. Coming from Poland, right on the border with the conflict, the argument is different again. European defense independence isn't about replacing or just preserving the alliance. It's the absolute necessary precondition for the alliance's survival.
Yeah.
Meaning his view, reflecting that frontline urgency, is basically only a strong, self-reliant Europe will actually be respected and considered a valuable ally by a more transactional America. Strength is the price of admission to a meaningful alliance now.
Interesting. 3 different motivations: replacement, preservation, precondition for survival. But they all seem to be pushing Europe in a similar direction towards more self-reliance.
They are. And despite the different strategic endgames they might envision, the source material suggests they're all converging on what's probably the most likely scenario for NATO over the next decade or so.
Which is?
The scenario often termed the dormant NATO.
Dormant NATO sounds not great.
Well, it means the U.S. doesn't formally leave the alliance. Article 5, the Collective Defense Clause, technically stays on the books. But functionally, the U.S. retrenches its conventional forces from Europe. It shifts its main focus, its resources, its best kit towards the Indo-Pacific.
So the U.S. commitment becomes, what, just the nuclear umbrella, a guarantee of last resort?
Essentially, yes. The nuclear umbrella of last resort, while Europe is pushed, maybe forced, to take primary responsibility for its own conventional deterrence against threats like Russia. The U.S. role becomes more like an offshore balancer and, crucially, the primary arms supplier.
Which brings us right back to the Europe pays model. That's the logical endpoint.
It really is. The transactional policy leads directly to this functional reality.
Okay, so if dormant NATO is the likely reality, this new normal, what does the report say Europe absolutely must do? What are the urgent recommendations?
They're pretty concrete and demanding. First, Europe has got to move beyond voluntary targets for defense cooperation, like the ones in EDIS. They need binding mandates for collaborative procurement.
Binding mandates, meaning countries have to buy kit together?
Yes. To overcome national protectionism, which fragments the market, drives up costs, and means forces can't easily operate together. That simply has to end if they're serious about efficiency and scale.
Makes sense. What about plugging that hollow force gap, the enablers?
That's the second major recommendation. Establish a dedicated European Strategic Enablers Fund. This needs serious money, specifically ring-fenced, to jointly develop or buy those missing pieces, the ISR satellites, the strategic airlift capacity, the refueling tankers. Without closing that gap, other spending is just less effective.
A dedicated fund.
Okay, yeah.
And the third one sounds provocative, mandating Article 5 minus U.S. war games.
Yeah, it's meant to be provocative, to force a real reckoning. It means rigorously stress testing European forces in realistic war game scenarios that explicitly assume U.S. conventional support is either totally absent or significantly delayed.
Right.
It's about moving beyond political talk and identifying the actual tangible capability gaps that would emerge on day one of a crisis without the U.S. cavalry immediately riding over the hill.
Yeah.
They need to know precisely where they'd stand alone.
That would certainly focus minds. It feels like the big takeaway from this deep dive is that whether everyone's fully admitted it yet or not, the transatlantic security structure has already fundamentally changed.
Yeah.
Europe is now paying the price, literally, for more self-sufficiency.
It has changed. And maybe the final thought to leave you with, drawing from the analysis, is a bit paradoxical. President Trump's America First transactional approach designed, to reduce U.S. burdens and push Europe to spend more, it might be having this unintended consequence.
Yeah.
It's actually making ambitious EU defense integration things previously considered politically impossible, like joint EU defense borrowing or truly binding procurement mandates. It's making those things seem like a physical and military necessity for Europe's basic survival.
Huh. So the push for America First could inadvertently be forcing European unity, at least on defense.
In a way, yes. The path to genuine European defense independence, ironically, seems paved with the kind of collaborative spending and integration that this new transactional reality demands. It's becoming less of a choice and more of a necessity.
You've been listening to Nation Scope Podcast, where Jordan and Jamie analyze the stories shaping America and the world. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll catch you next time.